Al-Quds brigades, the armed wing of the PIJ, said today our fighters detonated an MK84 bomb left behind by the Israeli enemy, which had been prepared in advance in a convoy of enemy vehicles in Al-Tufah neighborhood east of Gaza City. An MK84 is that 2,000-pound bomb, 1 ton approximately, bomb that Israel lands on innocent people inside of the Gaza Strip. Some of them landed and did not detonate. The Palestinian resistance published several videos of them recycling these weapons, you see. They're trying to be eco-friendly. So they recycled these weapons coming from Israel, and they attacked the genocide soldiers with them. But this is enormous. This is enormous. So if they exploded an MK84, and because this is fresh, they did not really give in too many details, because the Palestinian resistance usually tries to verify. Clearly, the impact was so big that they were unable to see how many from the vehicles had remained. And in Israel, no one said anything. It's as if nothing happened. But this is very serious. Inside of the Gaza Strip today, the Israeli army declared that they are getting more reservists to fight in Gaza. How? From where? I don't know. Because half of the Israeli population, half of the reservists, over half, up to 70%, refuse to follow orders. And they're saying today that they want to expand the operation inside of the Gaza Strip by calling more reservists. Where are they going to bring them from? Is it just to show? Are they kidding us? Are they joking? Let's see. I mean, okay, if you want to bring more reservists, at the end of the day, we're going to see a count of them. Because it isn't just Israel who observes things in Gaza. No, there are networks who operate there, who Israel didn't kill. I mean, Israel killed over 200 journalists in Gaza since October the 7th to try and hide the truth as much as possible. But they're still operating, and the Palestinian resistance has eyes, and civilians can still take photo. It's the first live stream genocide on earth. So we're going to see if they're able to bring some of them. So far, we haven't seen anything. But what we have seen today is, well, more problems. What are these problems? Now there is a total conflict, an absolute conflict between the IDF chief of staff and Benjamin Netanyahu. Now, Benjamin Netanyahu had a statement during which he stated, we have objectives of the war. We want to bring back the Israeli prisoners of war, but the bigger aim is to get the victory over the enemy. So he made this statement today. We want to return the 59 kidnapped. The war has an ultimate goal, victory over the enemy. That means Benjamin Netanyahu is outright putting the goal of eliminating or being victorious over what they call the enemy. That's over and more important than bringing back the kidnapped. Immediately after this, clashes started to happen between protesters and the Israeli security forces. Many protests erupted in Israel, saying that the Israeli prime minister is outright prioritizing victory, or what he labels as a victory, over the lives of those who are kidnapped, who only returned to Israel, by the way, through negotiations. Now, this was something that the Israeli IDF chief of staff heard. However, he didn't really accept it that much. And as a matter of fact, he made an opposing statement. His statement was, oh, no, we're saying that the kidnapped are first and then victory. So we had one of these reports in the Israeli Ma'arif saying that Zamir is going out against Netanyahu and Smotrich on this issue, as in the issue of the kidnapped. And what is he saying? He's saying, as an army, our moral obligation is to firstly bring back the kidnapped and also obtain victory over the enemy. But first, bring back those who are kidnapped. What does that say? That says that the IDF is not aligned with the goals of the prime minister, not aligned in terms of the priority, to say the least. Okay, both of them are saying we want to give them back. Both of them are saying we want to defeat Hamas, but not both of them are saying that the first priority is to get back the prisoners of war. Benjamin Netanyahu and Smotrich and Ben Gvir are saying no, eliminate, and then, the kidnapped are secondary, and there's a chance that we wouldn't get them back because being victorious, according to them, is more important than bringing back those Israelis. And by the way, those who are remaining now are IDF soldiers, by the way. Now imagine the message, imagine how thick these people are, how stupid they are. Imagine the message that you're giving to those who you're sending to fight. So Israel now has mostly kidnapped IDF soldiers in Gaza remaining. Those who were taken by Hamas on the 7th of October from the Gaza division. To remind people, Hamas's armed wing took the whole of the Gaza division in 2 hours. They took all of that division down and they imprisoned many of them, including senior commanders. The message that Netanyahu and Smotrich and Ben Gvir and the Israeli government, in effect, the political leadership, is sending to those who are fighting is, well, your life is not a priority. So you can be kidnapped tomorrow, and that's not a priority. Now, in between themselves, they know that there's something called the Hannibal Directive. And they know that that gets implemented. They try and hide it from the newbies, from the younger ones, those who are the new. But at the end of the day, they know if someone is kidnapped, we would rather that we kill them than pay a price. This is something very important. And this is something that's happening for the first time in the history of Israel. Ever since the 70s, it has been well known and written, documented in Israel, that the IDF chief of staff is bound by the political leadership, and the political leadership in the form of the prime minister. Of course, there's a defense minister in between, but ultimately the decisions go back to the prime minister. Now, in many cases, not all of the Israeli prime ministers abused that position of the prime minister to dictate things, but they, of course, delegated many things to the military leadership and to the defense minister in many cases too, so that they can come up with certain actions that they believe are more suitable to the state of Israel, including the limitation of the attacks or the consistency or the length of campaign that Israel conducts against whoever it wants to conduct actions against. And usually, of course, the defense minister was an ex-IDF chief of staff, mostly. Now, in a very rare example, the Israeli defense minister, or the genocide minister, to be more accurate, he hardly has any history in the Israeli army. Why? Because Netanyahu doesn't want someone who has the military expertise. He just wants someone who will listen and obey. And that's why he has Israel Katz. But the IDF chief of staff is a little bit more problematic. Now, what makes all of this worse is the fact that this man, Eyal Zamir, the chief of staff, was the same man who Netanyahu and Smotrich, just before the previous IDF chief of staff, Herzi Halevi, resigned, were hailing, were saying that this is the man for the job. This is the man of the hour. This is the man who's going to occupy Gaza and going to expand the operation. None of that happened. None of that happened. And now we reached a level where Ben Gvir, Smotrich is saying in the meetings that they're having in the smaller cabinet, if someone else wants the position, welcome. Meaning, you can get the hell out and we'll bring someone else. Imagine the approach that the political leadership and that a finance minister has towards the IDF chief of staff. Bezalel Smotrich isn't any security expert. Bezalel Smotrich is a man who is supposed to be a finance minister. And he has a ministry in the Ministry of Defense, a minister role in the Ministry of Defense. Netanyahu, of course, had to come up with these new roles so that he can make something work. And that was, by the way, something that caused him a lot of problems with the previous defense minister, Yoav Gallant, because he started to take more authority. However, now they're threatening and they are basically bullying this man. And reports in Israel are showing that they actually had, again, heated conversations in the cabinet meeting, in the smaller cabinet meeting that took place between Benjamin Netanyahu, the defense minister, the IDF chief of staff, and two other senior figures. This is Israel, and this is the country that is leading what they call the war of revival and the most important war in Israel's history. And this is what's happening between them. Now, officially, he's declaring that he's going to send more troops to Gaza. But that, again, is a statement that totally contradicts the reality on the ground. The reality on the ground is, well, he himself, the same IDF chief of staff, said that if we do go to Gaza in bigger numbers, we're going to have a horror scenario. Many would be killed. And there was also a mention of the lack of numbers. They can't make up the numbers to go into Gaza and have a very large campaign. Over half are refusing. Those who served before, they don't want to go back. Tens of thousands of killed and wounded. Over 100,000 reported to be having PTSD. What are you going to do exactly? Mercenaries, where are you going to bring them from? It's not happening. Yet, despite all of that, he's saying that he wants to expand the operation and that they're recruiting more from the reservists. The reservists, the other day, he had to send people back because he was sending them to Gaza untrained. This is how desperate Israel is. Israel was sending people who had PTSD back to the war, and they killed themselves. Israel sent untrained teenagers who haven't finished their military training to Gaza. Not only without relevant training, without any training on urban warfare, by the way. And that's, of course, another argument, because no one's trained on Gaza warfare, which is an urbanicide warfare. No one's trained on that. And that's why they have so many high numbers of casualties inside of the Gaza Strip, because they don't know what they're doing. They're randomly going from one place to another, under the eye and watch of the Palestinian resistance, who's targeting now the Israeli terrorists in Gaza in very calculated, carefully thought out and put together ambushes, and retreating safely. Retreating safely. This is what's happening now. So Israel's not seeing them to a level where they're conducting multiple attacks from one location, because Israel is unable to see where they're coming from. So how are they trying to convince the people that they're going to have more reservists to come in? I'm not sure. At the end of the day, we're going to have to see on the ground where they come up with this information from. Expanding the number of actual troops. It's not that they're saying we're going to increase the strikes. That's something else. Then again, there's another problem with the strikes, because we're seeing less airstrikes in Gaza. And Israel just introduced more rockets. There was a rocket used for the first time ever against the Gaza Strip. Again, an indication that they're having tangible problems, immediate problems with the pilots who don't want to serve, and also something could be happening with their arms too, with the arms of the Israeli army. That's very, very important. Now, moving on to the talks between Iran and the United States in Oman. There was a surprising turn that happened today. What happened today? Well, there was a report that these talks, they actually paused. No more talking. The United States and Iran, they're no longer talking after they had weeks, consecutive weeks, during which they were talking and they were negotiating and they were saying there's positive talks as well and everything's going fine. Now, there was this report came actually in the Middle East Eye, saying that no, actually these talks have stalled. Now, according to the report, they're saying it's not necessarily a breakdown. However, Washington has significantly escalated its threats against Tehran. Washington is increasing the tone against Tehran, and that is leading to the stall. Those talks stopping now, at least temporarily. Now, the interesting thing is that there were two different statements coming from Iran and from the United States. From an Iranian perspective, they said that there have been technical delays. The reasons for the delay are technical. In relation to the United States, they said, well, oh no, we actually didn't have anything planned yet. We didn't have any planned talks this week. So clearly something is happening there. Trump is escalating his tone. He is threatening any country that would be dealing with Iran with more sanctions, saying don't buy Iranian oil, trying to apply more pressure so that he can potentially extract more from the Iranian position. But the Iranians, from their side, they're sticking to their core conditions in relation to the negotiations. Another argument that's coming from the United States is the United States Secretary of Defense saying that Iran is actually in charge of all of these problems happening from Ansarullah. And this is the other thing that I wanted to talk to you about. Ansarullah in Yemen. They are increasing the attacks against Israel, and today they declared that they carried out multiple strikes against Israel. And one of them was in an area called Ramat David. Ramat David is an area, is a base that is very significant for Israel. It is very large in size. The previously Hezbollah targeted this location, but now Ansarullah are targeting this location again. Okay, let's have where's that link go? See, okay, now the link is not opening for some reason. Anyway, they said they targeted occupied Haifa because this area, this base is actually in the near the Haifa area. They have targeted it. They said we landed it successfully. They also said that we carried out an attack against a vital target in occupied Jaffa. So not only that they're targeting Haifa, no, they're targeting Jaffa too. Then there was another declaration coming from one of Ansarullah's top figures, al-Bukhaiti, again reiterating that even if Britain joins these attacks, it's going to be ineffective because they're going to continue with their attacks. And millions of people in Sana'a are protesting and supporting their leaders in their continued attacks against anything linked to Israel in the Red Sea. Now, the interesting bit came in the form of, you can call it an offer. I mean, it was during a statement. J.D. Vance made a statement. He had an interview actually on Fox News, during which he said, if Ansarullah stop their attacks on ships, then we will stop our attacks tomorrow. Meaning, well, we're willing to reach a deal with them. He said they can go back to whatever they were doing before they started to attack. Why is this not like a normal statement? For various reasons. Number one, the United States is trying to portray Ansarullah as this terrorist organization wreaking havoc, right? Attacking every ship left, right, and center, even though the people said we're conducting attacks against any Israeli-linked ships. And the United States, of course, and the UK, they put themselves in the picture in defense of a genocidal entity, butchering children, and therefore they started to take fire too, of course, because they're attacking Yemen. Now, the interesting thing is, the United States doesn't have a problem with Ansarullah, according to J.D. Vance. Why? Because he's saying you can go back to whatever you were doing the day before. That means they don't have a problem with Ansarullah or their ideology or them being in power. They just have a problem with these people conducting actions that affect genocidal Israel. That is the only problem. And that is a very interesting statement too. Now, instead of J.D. Vance going back to Trump and speaking with Israel, who has been killing people for the past 1.5 years in its barbaric genocide, and telling them to stop. That is the only way you can stop Ansarullah, because these people, they were monitoring the ceasefire. I mean, they said we will only stop once the once the genocide stops and once Gaza has aid in, the siege is lifted. When the siege was lifted, when aid started to go in, and when there was a ceasefire, they stopped. But they said we're going to be monitoring it very, very carefully. Yemen has been the only country that took such a strong position against Israel. They said, we will be monitoring everything that you do. 2 days, even 1 day before the ceasefire took effect, they were still attacking Israel. And they were declaring that these attacks are to support the Palestinian negotiator. Why? To show that we have leverage. Israel needs to know that they will be suffering in the Red Sea, and we will attack them if they go back to the war. And again, the United States, instead of seeing that it's Israel who broke the ceasefire, therefore these people started to take action again, they go and attack them on behalf of Israel. Likewise with Britain too, instead of going against the culprits who are attacking the shores of Europe now, by the way, attacking the shores of Europe with drones, almost killing people, just for sympathizing with Gaza. So this shows you that these people, they're not stopping anytime soon. But despite that, J.D. Vance is giving them an offer. J.D. Vance is giving them an offer, and Hegseth is saying that Iran is having like a harsher tone. Iran is responsible for what they're doing. And we're seeing what they're doing with Ansarullah. Hegseth was indicating that Iran is still sending something to Ansarullah in Yemen, even when Iran is trying to detach itself from the situation. I mean, everyone knows that they are in a close relationship with Yemen, but Iran always said, and it is visible from the actions on the ground, that Yemen as a country and its leadership, they have their independence. And they are making these decisions regardless of what Iran thinks or whatever negotiations the United States has with Iran, by the way. Because from an Iranian perspective, for example, if things slightly de-escalated, it could potentially help them more with the negotiations. At the end of the day, Iran did manage to stop with an agreement the Iraqi armed movements attacks against US bases inside of Iraq and against Israel. Of course, it was also something related to the internal politics of Iraq at the time. However, it's showing that there's one side showing this slight understanding with Ansarullah, saying that, we can reach a deal with them if they stop tomorrow. We'll stop our attacks too. Hegseth, on the other hand, and Trump having these escalatory tones coming with them. Now, the big question in relation to all of this is there a pressure coming from the Zionist lobby and from Benjamin Netanyahu to stop this deal? Why? Because Israel, they were the ones who convinced Trump to get out of the previous agreement. It was nothing to do with America and American interests and the American people. It wasn't to do with any of that. It was to do with Israel purely. Well, like we've been seeing now as well, how much of it is to do with Israel, nothing to do with the US or Europe, whatever it is. But of course, Benjamin Netanyahu, tries to say, oh, no, they're coming after you. Only for everyone to see that it's the Israeli terrorism, migrating to Europe now with their attack in Malta. And by the way, no European leader said a word. Have you heard anyone say anything? No one said a word. Imagine it was the opposite side. Wow, they won't stop. But when it's Israel, they don't say anything. Benjamin Netanyahu could be applying pressure on Donald Trump, and the lobby could be working really hard to try and prevent a deal. How will we realize if things are going to de-escalate or go back to, well, the positivity that we've been hearing for the past few days between Iran and the United States, if there would be a fourth round of talks? If there isn't going to be a fourth round of talks, and these talks were consecutive, meaning both sides wanted to reach an agreement fairly quickly, if there is no other round in the next few weeks, that means things have gone into a really bad place. It hasn't really gone well. If they go back and talk, that means that no, there was a slight glitch and things will go back to normal, and they might be able to reach a deal at some point.